You may have heard the story about Brianna Gay, a fatal stabbing that is being investigated as a possible hate crime. It's a tragic story. A young teenager, transgender, was murdered, stabbed to death, and there are two teenagers that they are suspecting of having done this, and they are investigating whether or not it was a hate crime because the individual was trans. There's a bigger story here. I saw a video talking about this. It's from the Daily Mail. It says, "Heartbreaking trans girl's last video before being stabbed to death." And it says it was her last try. She was so young and didn't deserve what happened to her. RIP. And in the video, the individual, Gay, says, "I'm going to give life one last try." And that was kind of sad to hear. I mean, this person should not be dead. It's heartbreaking. But what about life made this person want to only give it one last try before whatever happened? And what made this individual trans, or what is making young men want to be trans? And I think the reality is men don't want to be men anymore because being a man is bad. And that's really it. Now, I think there's a variety of factors that play a role in what makes somebody trans. Obviously, gender dysphoria is a DSM-5 mental disorder, I believe they call it. Or I don't know if they call it a disorder anymore, to be completely honest. I'm not entirely sure. But something is affecting their mind, and it's creating a disassociation or a disconnect between their body and their perceived self. Now, I think a large component of what we see, there's multifaceted views of what it is that makes someone trans. Right now, there's a viral thread about Leah Thomas, the swimmer in the NCAA controversy who's biologically male trans woman. According to the thread, Leah Thomas and many of their friends are actually autogynephiles, meaning it's a fetish and not dysphoria. They are aroused at the thought of people perceiving them as women, or them. I think it actually means they perceive themselves that way, and it arouses them. But watching this video, I think there's another component that I want to hit at. Why would a young male decide they want to be female? Well, as I already mentioned, the aforementioned reasons, but I also believe there may be some effeminate males who have decided that everything about them is not good enough. Being a man is bad. The things they're driven to want are bad. They're insulted. They're mocked. They're toxic. They're incels. They can't attract women. So they decide maybe it's easier to just be a woman, because then, no matter what you do, there are people who will accept you and support you. And I think that's a large component of it. I'm not saying I think it is the entirety of the story, but when you see stories like how Andrew Tate sells men on toxic masculinity, The Guardian says toxic masculinity fuels dangerous driving like drink. French advert says, you mean drunk driving? Toxic masculinity is simulating toxic masculinity is simulating drunk driving. Is that what we're trying to say? We have this from a Spectator. We are living through the golden age of misogyny. We have this from Bored Panda, fragile masculinity. 40 men whose masculinity was so fragile and toxic, they had to be shamed online. And so what happens? Young boys, they're growing up in an environment, in a society, in a culture where the things they feel and the things they want are bad, and they should be punished for it. And it didn't start where we are now. I remember hearing those stories about Adderall, ADHD, Ritalin, etc. I talked about it last week. Young boys in school fidgeting, wanting to go play, and they're told, no, stop, you're bad. Wanting to be excited, wanting to be energetic, wanting to work out, wrong. Sit still, shut up. Well, many of these young boys are told that their natural drives are a medical problem. And their parents bring them in and they say, you need to sit still and shut up, take the medication. And so they do. There are other young boys that are in a similar position, where they see that the people they look up to, the strong men, are insulted and mocked. And then what happens? Over the span of 10 or 20 years, you get beaten down, effeminate, domesticated males who either are completely toxic and just fed up with the system, and I mean literally toxic, or terrified and unwilling to stand up for who they are and what they believe in. And thus, the next generation will get only one or the other. Lazy, middle-class intellectual males who will not teach their kids or be strong. Kids who then do not have strong male role models teach them how to be a hero. And thus, they think, maybe the only thing for them is to be a girl. Now, I'm not saying all young trans boys are doing that. But when I see this video of this individual, Brianna Gay, saying, I'll give life one last try, I have to wonder about this. I don't believe that for every single one of these people, and I'm not saying it's not true for some of them, I'm saying that I believe there are some people who simply think, you look online and what do you see? Young women get tons of likes on social media for simply being women. Young women create OnlyFans and just have to show off their bodies and get paid decent sums of money. Not all of them, but enough of them. And young men are treated like gutter trash. Something I've talked about quite a bit. And then, of course, the left liberals can mock and belittle and insult and do all they want. But perhaps real masculinity is in not caring what your opinions are. I mean, they'll pull my quotes out of context. They'll insult me and they'll lie and they'll call me ugly. And it's like, I don't know, whatever. Got some blemishes on my face right now. My teeth are crooked. That's really the last thing I care about. And maybe that's real masculinity. I suppose when you live in the gutter for long enough, the words roll right off your back. As there's very little that I actively would get all worked up about. But let me tell you the story as I see it. When I'm growing up, and I'm a young teenage male, I had a friend whose sister was a server at a restaurant, made something like $200 per night, working nights, but getting those tips, serving several tables, a couple $100 per night. I mean, that's crazy to me. Wow, it wasn't even like an upscale restaurant or anything. But you got to imagine you work for 4 hours, get a tip of around $20 to $30, take care of 10 tables in the 4 hours you work every night. You're making a couple $100. Crazy. Now, the job I was able to get was at a grocery store. They paid me minimum wage, and I made per week like $60. Yeah. I mean, take home, it was probably like $80 to $100 per week. Got a job at an airport lifting heavy bags. They paid me $10 an hour. Would work full time, 40 hours, and take home a couple $100. Worthless. Couldn't afford rent, couldn't do anything. I remember when I was living in Wrigleyville in Chicago, and I would go to all of these bars because that's what it was. It was hospitality. I needed a job. And every single one of them said they wouldn't hire a dude. Yet all the young women, they were getting jobs that were paying them more money. Now, I don't blame women for that. I recognize it's reality. Young women, 21 years old, working as a bartender. She doesn't know how to make any drinks, really, but the guys want to spend money on it. So guys in their 30s who have careers, they want to come to the bar and they want to see young women. Or if the bartender is a 30, 40-year-old guy who can make a mean Manhattan or whatever, old-fashioned, yeah, then they're going to accept that as well. But if you're a young guy, you're worthless. So for me growing up, it was figure it out. But I have to wonder, in today's day and age, if you're a young man growing up in this environment where you can't find work, but all around you, young women are getting all of this preferred treatment at an early age, well, then you're certainly going to think being a woman is better. And then you have all of this in media saying, not only is it better, but you're bad. So imagine this. A kid today experiencing what I experienced, I can't imagine how they pull through this. For one, with the expansion of dating apps, we're already seeing this phenomenon that I described a few years ago, but now we're seeing it. It's true. Here's what happened. When the internet started, yeah, people used it. When social media started, it started to change things. It used to be that women on college campuses would date men on college campuses, or guys they knew or met at parties, maybe a little bit older or whatever. But these college guys didn't have a whole lot because young men have zero societal value. And that's true. I'm not saying that to be mean. They have no strong skills. They don't have wealth. So what do they have? You got to learn. You got to work. So what happens now with the advent of social media is that many of these young college women now have access to a larger dating pool. 30-year-old men in the nearby area can now see their profiles, hit them up, and hang out. And the women have the option. You can hang out with the college guy, and of course they still do. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but this is a phenomenon that is happening. Young 20-year-old woman at college sees a 28-year-old guy on Tinder or on some social media platform, whatever she's using. He says, I got a good job. I make $50K, $60K a year. I'll take you out for dinner and we'll go drive down to the lake in my car. College guy says, I don't have any money. We can hang out in the dorm and smoke pot and watch movies. I know maybe for a lot of women that works. But now you have these young women are dating older guys because they have access through social media. So what happens now is young men can't even date. You get the rise of incels, young men who don't or MGTOW. You get laws. You get, in so many ways, being a man sucking. No, I got to be honest. I think being a man is pretty great. Not having periods kind of thing sounds pretty good. I appreciate the muscle and bone density and the collagen because as a man, I suppose I just like running and jumping off of things, skating and exercising and all that stuff. But in society, for young men who are growing up with no strong role models, don't get me wrong, I mean, there are superheroes in movies and stuff, but I don't know if that's enough. No strong men to teach them how to be men. A society saying masculinity is toxic. The behaviors you're engaging in require medication. And then on social media, they can see young women are getting all the followers. And that's something I think people our age don't consider that you should. Think about this. Think about what it must be to be a young man on Instagram. And you're posting pictures and you get 100 likes. But then your female classmates are getting 200, 300 likes. Yeah. Nobody cares, but now it's quantifiable. It used to be that when you were a young man, you'd go to try to get a job, a low-end job, and they would just say, sorry, not interested. At least that's how it was when I was growing up. I remember going to an ice cream shop and saying I needed a job when I was 16, and they were just like, yeah, right. And the girls I knew who lived there, because I knew them, they were like, dude, they only hire young girls. Like the owner said, nobody wants to buy ice cream from a dude. And I'm like, okay. Ended up working fast food and making, garbage money and being treated like crap. That used to be it, though. You would just feel it and you knew it and you'd work hard because you were going to succeed. But now it's quantifiable. Now you're going on social media and you're seeing all of these social media posts are getting tons of attention. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the guys giving them attention older are creepy for sure. But then being beaten down and told you're toxic. No surprise, as I stated yesterday, why people like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson. So here's what I think. There was this viral thread talking about how on 4chan they were encouraging young men to be trans because not that they're actually gender dysphoric, not that they're aroused by being women or anything like that, but because life was just better. Give up. Be trans. Be a femboy, they said. Now, some people said it was a troll. Whatever. Call it a troll. I think a lot of it's real. Let me show you what Vox says. Why millions of men admire internet misogynist Andrew Tate. And right away, the answer is right there in the headline, why men don't want to be men and why, I think we're seeing at least some of this. Because he's a misogynist. That's right. The things he believes, it's misogyny. The things you like, the things you feel, you're bad. And the commercials say so. They say, while espousing motivational messages about fitness and financial well-being, controversial influencer Andrew Tate is also a self-described misogynist who advocates male supremacy and celebrates violence against women. Even though he's been banned from TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, he's gained a massive online following, blah, blah, blah. He's just one of many figures who make up the manosphere, an internet ecosystem that combines self-improvement advice with casual and sometimes violent misogyny. Robert Lawson, an associate professor of sociolinguistics at Birmingham City University in the UK, and author of a book, blah, 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 gave an interview to explain blah, blah, blah. He says, I'm interested in language and masculinity, particularly in media spaces. And so unfortunately, through my line of research, I have to spend time on these less enjoyable, less pleasant parts of the internet. I mean, that's basically it. That's the point. He says, I think that he is so seductive to a big audience because the image of masculinity that he sells is one that's very rooted in traditional male characteristics. He's very big on this idea of the alpha male, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. You get the point. I think we have a crisis of masculinity. I think men don't want to be men anymore. I think men are told that if you try and help a woman who is being attacked, that you're bad. There was a post on Twitter that got some traction where they said, if you're a man at a gym who compliments a woman, you're a creep. But if you're a man who follows her into the locker room claiming to be a woman and then expose yourself to her, she's the bigot. The system is broken. Call it what you want. Demoralization, destabilization. I don't know, man. It certainly seems like system is broken. And maybe it's intentional. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's an emergent phenomenon. Maybe what you get is weak men unwilling to stand up and speak out because, well, the path of least resistance is the easier path. So they refuse to speak out against injustices and a system that is biased against men. And I'm not saying in every possible way, and I'm not saying absolutely. I'm saying there are biases against men in the system. And it makes young men loathe their existence. It makes them want to end their own lives. It makes them want to be something else, which brings me to the issue of these trans youth. I think there are many young males who are dysphoric. I think endocrine disruptors are feminizing young males and potentially masculinizing females. I think plastics, phthalates, PCBs, etc. we better be careful of. But I do believe there's probably some effeminate young men who are small who think my life would be better if I was like them, because they see a media that defends women. They see a media that promotes women. They see a legal system that punishes men. They see a media that insults men. And they see strong figures like Jordan Peterson, who, let's be honest, is not the most masculine guy, but he is fatherly, and they call him a Nazi and alt-right. They see people like Andrew Tate, a strong man, a fighter, quite literally, and they call him all the worst things. And they see Donald Trump. Some of these men say, you know what? Screw you. And they latch on to some of the worst and most toxic elements of masculinity, which exist. And then there are probably smaller and weaker men who just cry and say, I just want people to love me and like me. And well, I tell you this, we've seen it from all the propagandizing. Well, if right now, despite what they're saying about this being a hate crime, it exists, you're going to get support from every establishment institution. So all of those institutions and all of those people who would insult you and mock you and belittle you, all of those institutions will turn with a smile on their face if you decide to be trans. And so for many of these young men, I imagine it's not about actually being dysphoric. It's about just wanting people to say they love you. It's a scary thought, I guess. You know, and there are many feminists who say that men need emotional responses and emotional attachments, and it's true. Not all men do, and they don't need as much as women, I'd imagine. But for a lot of these younger men who are getting no support, who have no strong role models and are being belittled for who they are and told they need medication to stop their natural behaviors, surprise, surprise, they either don't want to live anymore or they want to live as something else entirely. And so you see it across the board. It's not just identity issues. It's escapism in general. It's playing video games. It's changing your name. It's crying on camera. Now, to be fair, to be honest, most transgender youth, according to the studies, are female to male. But it's the exact same thing. Young women are told to be feminine, to want to be a mother. These are bad things. To be toxically feminine, to be called a bitch or to be called catty, these are all really, really bad things. And so these ideas percolate. They say, you don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. You don't want to raise a family. That's bad. You want to be a hero. You want to be like the Marvel character. And so you actually have the inverse happening to young women. And I think this may be an artifact of equity and equality. The encouragement of young women to be more manly and the encouragement of men, of boys, to be more womanly. Because they think when they go to a young boy and say, it's okay to be like a girl. And when they go to a girl, it's okay to be like a guy. They think that what they're really doing is trying to just let children be children, but they're actually pushing them in those directions. I think that females, because they're more subject-oriented, this is why they're more likely to experience transgenderism, gender dysphoria at a younger age, because they're more susceptible to the social elements than young men. My point with young men not wanting to be men anymore is just that there are some young men who don't. Granted, young men are probably a bit more obstinate, so you will see substantially more females wanting to be male, and they'll want to take testosterone. My understanding is that testosterone creates euphoria in these young girls who take it. Now, that's creepy. A drug that makes you feel good. Man. What I can say is there's a crisis of masculinity. It manifests in many stories. Stories about men not wanting to help women and children. I've done 3 of these videos over the past few years, and they always get 1 million+ views. I feel like the reason those videos do so well is because everything I explained culminates to the point of animosity, where the men say, fine, if you don't like me, if you don't believe in what I am, if you tell me I need medication because I'm bad, then screw you, you're on your own. So when people hear stories about, say, a woman in a gym and no one will help her, they say justice. When they hear stories about a woman being attacked on a train and no one helping her, they say justice. I don't know if they're all saying justice. I'm saying that many people, that they view it as a kind of catharsis, that for this, women will be worse off, and that's the system they created. But where does that leave us? Just saying outright you won't participate or you'll let them wallow. Not every woman who gets attacked believes in this. In fact, I'd argue that most women, especially those who are being attacked and not getting any men to help them, wish men would. But the system is broken. And until the system is repaired and men are allowed to be men, not toxically, but actually, then everyone's just going to be worse off for it. I think suicide rates are going to skyrocket, and that's what we're seeing among young girls. Record high depression and suicide. The problems will only get worse. Perhaps it's demoralization, perhaps it's destabilization. I don't know, man. But it looks to me like men just don't want to be men anymore because society has told them F you to their faces. And so it's tough. Who would want to fight through that as a young person? They wouldn't. For those of us that are millennial males, most of you watching are, it's no surprise we're resistant to it because we grew up in a different time. But imagine what it must be like for a young man now who can't get a girlfriend because they're just not valuable in society, who can't get followers on social media, and I'm talking about every single male, and who are told repeatedly that they need medication to stop their behaviors and desires. Not to mention being inundated with PCBs, phthalates, etc. Man, it's probably not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's easy to be a young woman either. I'm saying the system is broken and we got to be better leaders for the next generation. Otherwise, the next generation of voters are going to be broken people who break the system further. And maybe that's inevitable because these liberals are just like, if someone's mentally ill, we tolerate their delusions. I don't think so. If someone's anorexic, you tell them to eat some food. Hey, man, I get it. That's why people like Andrew Tate. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.